I believe there comes a moment in history, not just politics, when silence becomes betrayal. And today I refuse to betray the people I represent or the truth they deserve. Mr. Trump, you claim to defend freedom, but what is freedom if it excludes, if it mocks the weak, if it mocks the weak, if it builds walls instead of bridges? True freedom empowers, uplifts, and protects the vulnerable, not just the loudest, not just the wealthiest. All. You say you love your country, but love is sacrifice. Love listens. Love leads with humility. The world is watching not for your next tweet, but for your next moment of integrity. To my fellow leaders, let us not be remembered for how many followers we had, but for how faithfully we followed what was right, especially when it cost us. Let us not mirror men of ego, but reflect the image of those who dared to love with courage. And if speaking truth means standing alone, then so be it. Because I would rather stand alone with truth than stand united in the silence of fear. There will always be moments when we're faced with a choice, one that silently asks us to decide who we want to be. Do we chase applause, or do we choose what is right, even if no one claps for us? In this world that glorifies fame, influence, and viral moments, it's easy to fall into the trap of popularity. It's tempting, it feels good, it feels rewarding, until it doesn't. Because when the noise dies down and the crowd moves on, what we're left with is our conscience. Accountability isn't glamorous. It doesn't trend. It doesn't gather millions of views in seconds. It doesn't charm the masses. But it's what makes you sleep peacefully at night. It's what allows you to look in the mirror and say, I didn't take the easy way out. Popularity is loud. It wants to be seen, heard, and adored. But accountability, it's quiet. It shows up even when no one's watching. It speaks the truth even when it trembles. It doesn't need the spotlight. It becomes a light in the dark. And more than ever, the world needs people who are willing to be that light. Not the brightest, not the most followed, just the most faithful to what is right. It takes courage to be accountable, because it means taking responsibility not just for what we do right, but also for what we fail to do. It means admitting when we're wrong. It means owning up when we fall short. It means letting go of the need to look perfect and instead choosing to be real. That's hard, because let's be honest, we all want to be liked. We want to be admired. We want to be accepted. But when our desire to be loved becomes stronger than our commitment to be truthful, we lose a part of ourselves. We begin to compromise. We say what people want to hear. We avoid the hard conversations. We make decisions that please the crowd but hurt our values. And slowly, without realizing it, we become performers on a stage instead of leaders with a soul. That's the cost of choosing popularity over accountability. You gain the world, but lose your peace. We were not created to be liked by everyone. We were created to live with purpose, to stand up when it's easier to stay quiet, to walk away from what's convenient when it's no longer right. And that means sometimes you will disappoint people. Sometimes you will be misunderstood. Sometimes the very ones who once cheered you on will turn their backs when you refuse to compromise your convictions. But that's okay, because you were not made for applause. You were made for impact. And impact doesn't come from being popular. It comes from being consistent, from being brave, from being kind even when it hurts, from telling the truth when it's easier to lie, from standing up even when your knees are shaking. That's where real strength is born, in the unseen choices, in the quiet moments of integrity, in the hidden sacrifices no one claps for. So if you ever find yourself choosing between doing what is right and doing what is liked, choose what is right, even if it's lonely, even if it's hard, even if you walk that road with trembling hands and a racing heart, because one day when all the lights are off and all the noise has faded, the only thing that will matter is whether you lived with honesty, whether you led with grace, and whether you remained faithful to the truth. It's not about being perfect. It's about being real, being accountable, being someone who can be trusted, not just when it's easy, but when it counts. Because popularity may get you attention, but accountability, that earns you respect. And more importantly, it gives you peace. And in a world where everyone is chasing followers, may you never forget the value of following your convictions. Because at the end of the day, the likes will fade, the trends will change, but the truth you live by, that will echo in the lives you touch long after your name is forgotten. So choose accountability, even when it's hard, even when it costs, because it's always worth it. There's a kind of strength this world doesn't talk about enough. It's not the kind that shouts or slams its fist to be heard. It's not the kind that wins every argument or proves every point. It's a quiet strength, one that chooses truth but refuses to carry hatred. You see, there's a way to speak honestly without becoming cruel. There's a way to stand for something without tearing people down. And it's not weakness, it's wisdom. We live in a time where everyone has a platform. Everyone has something to say. And while that can be powerful, it can also become dangerous when truth is no longer rooted in love. Sometimes we get so passionate about what we believe, we forget to be kind. We let our pain speak louder than our peace. We think being right gives us permission to be reckless with our words. But truth that is delivered without compassion is just noise. It may echo in a room, but it won't echo in a heart. There have been moments in my own life when I wanted to scream, when I felt misunderstood, when I saw injustice and wanted to fight back with the same fire that hurt me. But I've learned through grace, through time, through failure, that if we let our hurt shape our message, we don't change the world, we just add to its brokenness. And isn't that what we're trying to heal? There's something deeply beautiful about someone who can speak hard truths with a soft heart. Someone who can stand in front of opposition and say, I still love you, even though I disagree with you. That's what the world needs more of. Not people who are louder, but people who are deeper, who don't just speak truth, but who live it, embody it, and deliver it with gentleness. We don't need more critics. We need more builders. We need more peacemakers. We need more people who are brave enough to confront what's wrong, but loving enough to not destroy the person standing in front of them. Because the goal isn't to win arguments, it's to win people. And maybe that's what true maturity looks like. When you no longer feel the need to shout to be heard. When your truth is no longer rooted in ego, but in empathy. When your convictions are clear, but your heart is still open. It doesn't mean we stay silent when things go wrong. It doesn't mean we sugarcoat what's happening around us. It means we speak with intention. We correct with grace. We confront without condemning. And we remind ourselves that behind every opinion we disagree with is a person, a story, a soul. If we lose sight of that, then our truth, no matter how valid, you can believe strongly and still be gentle. You can be bold and still be respectful. You can fight for change and still be kind. These things are not opposites. They belong together. And when they are combined, they carry the power to heal, not just to convict. So when you speak your truth, ask yourself, am I doing this to prove a point or to plant a seed? One grows walls, the other grows bridges. And in the end, what will matter most is not how many people agreed with you, but how many people felt respected, seen, and loved by you, even when they didn't. There's a quote that says, you never know what someone is going through. Be kind, always. And maybe the reason truth without hatred is so powerful is because it makes space for that kindness. It makes space for redemption. It makes space for someone to change, not because they were shamed, but because they were shown a better way. That's the kind of truth I want to live by, not the kind that leaves scars, but the kind that opens eyes, not the kind that crushes, but the kind that awakens. Not the kind that says, look how wrong you are, but the kind that says, let me show you what's possible. Because in the end, people won't remember every word we say. but they'll remember how we made them feel. And if we can speak the truth without hatred, maybe we'll not only change their minds, we'll touch their hearts. And that's the real victory. Leadership is not about standing on a stage or being called by a title. It's not proven by how many people listen to your voice or follow your command. True leadership shows in how you treat the people who have nothing to offer you. It reveals itself in the moments when no one is clapping, no one is recording, and no one is there to give you credit. It's easy to lead with force. It's easy to lead with power. It's easy to lead with fear. But to lead with compassion, that takes depth. That takes courage. That takes a heart that's willing to feel, not just rule. Because at the end of the day, people don't remember how perfectly you led. They remember how you made them feel when they were at their lowest. They remember the words you said when they were too broken to speak. They remember whether you looked at them with judgment or with grace. Compassion doesn't make you soft. It makes you real. It allows you to see others not just as a crowd, but as individual lives. It helps you hear pain that isn't spoken out loud. It keeps you grounded when the world tries to put you on a pedestal. It reminds you that the position you hold is not for your benefit. It's a responsibility for the sake of others. You don't have to be famous to be a leader. You don't need to be elected or promoted or praised. You lead the moment you choose to care. You lead the moment you hold someone's hand instead of pointing a finger. You lead the moment you offer kindness in a world that is quick to cancel, quick to criticize, quick to discard. And maybe that's where the most powerful leadership begins. Not in the boardrooms or the ballots, but in the quiet choices, like listening when you want to speak, like giving when no one gives back, like forgiving even when the apology never came. Leadership measured by compassion changes people, not by force, but by example. It softens hearts that have grown hard. It builds trust that fear can never sustain. It plants seeds that grow into something lasting, not just policies or plans, but peace. Peace in relationships, peace in communities, peace in souls that have been torn down for far too long. The world is full of loud voices right now, people fighting to be heard, people trying to prove their point. But the leaders who truly change things are the ones who know when to be still, who choose empathy over ego, who choose patience over performance, who choose to carry others even when it would be easier to walk alone. And the truth is, sometimes compassion will be mistaken for weakness. People will question your strength. They'll ask why you don't fight back harder, speak harsher, push further. But you will know. You'll know that the strongest hands are not the ones that strike, but the ones that heal. The ones that stay open even after being burned. The ones that choose to reach out again and again, even when it hurts. You don't need to lose your fire to lead with compassion. You just need to let your fire warm others, not burn them. You need to let your truth build bridges, not walls. You need to let your decisions reflect not only strategy, but soul. Because people can follow orders, but they will only trust love. And trust, that's what holds people together when everything else falls apart. That's what makes a leader unforgettable. Not the spotlight, not the speeches, but the sincerity. So if you've been given a position to lead gently. Lead wisely. Lead from the heart. Speak truth, but speak it with tenderness. Stand firm, but stand with humility. And never forget, the greatest leaders the world has known weren't the ones who demanded to be followed. They were the ones who stooped low enough to serve. They didn't lead because they were the most powerful. They led because they cared the most. And when your time comes, because it will, may you be the kind of leader people remember, not because of what you achieved, but because of how you loved. The world doesn't just need more leaders. It needs better ones. Because leadership without character is dangerous. It becomes a show, a performance, something carefully crafted to please, to gain, to manipulate. But real leadership, the kind that leaves a mark on history for the right reasons, is built on something deeper. It's built on integrity. In global politics today, integrity feels like a lost voice. And yet, it's the very thing we're all longing to hear. In a world full of promises, we are searching for truth. In a system full of ambition, we are longing for honesty. And in a time when power can so easily silence principle, the quiet courage to do what's right has never been more needed. There's nothing wrong with influence. There's nothing wrong with power. What matters is how it's used. Because every decision made by someone in authority affects lives. Real people with real families, real struggles, real fears. And when those in power forget that, politics stops being about people and becomes about ego. Moral integrity doesn't mean perfection. It means accountability. It means asking yourself, even when no one else is watching, is this right? It's about keeping your word, even when it's hard. It's about telling the truth, even when it costs you. It's about saying no to what's popular, if it means saying yes to what's good. We've seen what happens when morality is traded for personal gain. Nations suffer, families break, the vulnerable become voiceless, and the trust that once held the country together begins to collapse. Because leadership without integrity creates noise, but not peace. It creates fear, but not respect. It creates followers, but not believers. We cannot fix a broken world with broken intentions. We cannot lead people toward peace with hearts full of pride. And we cannot call for unity while living in dishonesty. This is why integrity is not optional, it's essential, especially in global politics, because decisions made behind closed doors ripple across borders. Policies written on paper shape the lives of people who will never sit in those same rooms. And leaders who rise without a moral compass may one day steer entire nations into darkness. But it doesn't have to be this way. There is still a place for truth in leadership. There is still power in humility. And there is still hope for a generation of leaders who are more interested in being right with their conscience than being popular with the crowd. Imagine what could happen if the loudest voices in the world were also the most sincere. If leaders cared more about people than positions. If diplomacy wasn't driven by self-interest, but by a desire to protect the innocent, to uplift the forgotten, and to speak for those who have no stage of their own. It begins with one choice. One leader who refuses to lie. One official who says no to corruption. One heart that puts service above self. That one moment of integrity can light a fire that spreads through a nation. And that fire can't be bought, manipulated, or silenced. Because integrity may not win every vote, but it wins the respect of history. It may not fill your pockets, but it fills your purpose. And in a world where everything can be taken, fame, fortune, applause, integrity is one of the few things no one can steal from you. You either live by it or you don't. And the world sees the difference. The truth is, we don't just need strong economies, we need strong examples. We don't just need laws, we need leaders who live by them. We don't just need speeches, we need sincerity. And no matter how dark the world may feel, light still exists in every leader who chooses truth over convenience. In every nation that builds on justice instead of fear. In every voice that speaks not to be praised, but to protect. Here's the call, not just to presidents or prime ministers or public figures, but to every human being who has influence, whether on a stage or in a small room. Let your values be louder than your words. Let your conscience be stronger than your ambition. And let your decisions reflect not only what you want, but what is right. Because the world doesn't need more powerful people. It needs principled ones. And if integrity can lead just one leader to do what's right, that's how history changes. One honest heart at a time. There's a quiet truth that follows every decision we make. Whether we feel it or not, whether we admit it or not, history is always watching. It doesn't speak immediately. It doesn't interrupt or intervene, but it remembers. Every choice, every word, every silence, it all leaves an imprint, one that outlives applause, one that outlives power, one that outlives us. We often live like the moment is all that matters, like today's headlines are the final story. But the truth is, the world won't remember the noise. It will remember the meaning. It won't remember how loud we were, but how honest we were. It won't remember how strong we looked, but how we made people feel. And when everything else fades, history holds on to what was real. And that's the weight of responsibility for those who lead, who speak, who influence. Because when your voice reaches far, your conscience must go even deeper. It's easy to think in terms of right now, what's convenient, what's popular, what wins the crowd. But the real question is, what will stand the test of time? The people before us made choices we now study, admire, or regret. Some used their power to build peace. Others used it to fuel division. Some rose with courage, others crumbled under compromise. But all of them, whether they knew it or not, were seen by history. And today, so are we. We don't get to choose whether we make history. We only get to choose how. When you stand in a place of influence, whether as a leader, an artist, a parent, or a friend, you are shaping the future, not just by what you say out loud, but by what you refuse to stay silent about. Not just by the victories you chase, but by the values you hold on to when no one is looking. Because integrity is never invisible to time. Time exposes it. Time honors it. And time either becomes your witness or your wake-up call. This is not a warning. It's a gentle reminder that what we're doing today matters. That the decisions we make in private have consequences that echo far beyond our own lives. That every time we choose truth over comfort, compassion over pride, courage over fear, we're writing a story our children will one day read. The question is, will they be proud? Will they say we stood for what was right even when it was unpopular? Will they say we used our voices to bring healing, not harm? Will they see that we didn't just chase personal success, but fought for something bigger than ourselves? Because history doesn't need more heroes. It needs more honesty. It needs more people who are willing to take the long road, the harder road, the one that doesn't always get likes or headlines, but leaves a legacy. The truth is, some of the most powerful moments in history were never recorded with cameras or praise in their time. They were decisions made in silence, acts of kindness, courage that showed up when no one was watching. Those are the moments that shape the world. So if you feel like what you're doing doesn't matter, it does. If you're standing for what is right and wondering if it's worth it, it is. Because history is not watching the loudest, it's watching the truest. The ones who live with intention, the ones who carry both truth and tenderness. The ones who stay rooted even when the world is shaking. And one day, when this chapter is no longer the present but the past, may it be said of us that we were faithful, that we didn't just react, we responded. That we didn't just exist, we led. That we were not perfect, but we were real. History is watching, but more importantly, the next generation is listening. Let's give them a story worth passing on. Not because we did everything right, but because we refused to do what was easy when we knew what was right. And to history, judge me not by how loud I was, but by how I chose conviction over comfort. May these words not just challenge a man, but awaken a world, because real leadership doesn't destroy, it builds. And true power doesn't speak to impress, it speaks to heal. Thank you.